Managers.
I feel like we're like prepping for stand-up comedy. Like,
Yeah.
what's the deal with managers?
So,
That's my best Seinfeld impersonation.
so 3 managers walk into a bar. Nothing gets done because they don't do anything. That's good.
Oh, that's bad.
A priest, a horse, and a manager walk into a bar. What's up, everyone? Welcome to Per My Last Email, the show you listen to while you pretend you're working, and you're here to get the hot takes and tactics to help you navigate work life. I'm your co-host, Kyle Hagee.
And I'm your co-host, Kaila Lopez.
And we have a doozy of a show for you today, folks.
It's so true. We're talking about something that everyone that works has experienced before.
Probably thought about, and that is it worth it to be a manager?
So true.
Kayla, to kick the show off, we've both been managers.
Yes.
Did you enjoy the experience?
Yes and no. I think it depends on who the person is that you're managing.
Okay. You're like, so some yes, some no because of,
them being awful. No. I loved being a manager.
Okay.
Ultimately.
Why?
Well, I think the experience of working with somebody else and learning how to provide guidance and provide feedback, and also like transparently, like working with Charlotte, who was my direct report for 2 years. She was like such a dream and so much fun to work with that like I feel like I'm a little biased.
Yeah.
I had a great time being a manager, and it was like one of the most like fruitful and enjoyable times in my career.
Well, shout out to Charlotte. You made Kayla's life.
Truly.
Yes.
What about you?
I loved it as well. I think for all the reasons you listed, but I think being a manager puts you in a position to like scale impact. And so if you really care about the work you're doing, it gives you a little more like control. It gives you a little more ability to make impact at a higher, like more strategic level. And I love the work that, we were doing in that role. So I loved being a manager for all the reasons you listed and that element. And also like had a great team, which definitely matters a lot. Although we both said yes to we liked being a manager, we're going to talk about, again, is it worth it to be a manager? And we actually might have different takes.
I think we're going to disagree quite a bit here.
Good. I love arguing.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
We're going to tussle. So let's set the scene.
Yes.
Right? I mean, I think everybody knows what a manager is, right? But let's like go through it, right?
Oxford Dictionary defines manager.
Management.
Yeah.
No, but when you're in an organization, right, there's inherently going to be a hierarchy. You start out probably as an individual contributor. And then after a few years, there's this layer of new managers, first-time managers. On top of that, there's a layer of, let's call them middle managers who are managing the managers. It's going to get real gnarly, so bear with me. And then after that, you have, let's call it the executive level. It might be more than that, but, then you have the C-suite, the VPs, the people that are managing the managers that are managing.
Then you leave the C-suite, you become chairperson. Then you leave chairperson, you become a VC.
Yep.
And then you start a podcast, and we've risen to the top.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We skipped actually every level. We went straight.
No
to the
one
top.
told you just start a podcast.
Yeah,
Go right to the top.
Go all the way through.
But yes, continue.
So we all know this, right? That this is how it works. About 3 to 5 years into your career, you're probably starting to be faced with, well, my next step is to leave that IC or individual contributor layer and move into management. But that's a tricky situation.
Super tricky and really, really difficult.
So 1 out of every 2 employees, according to Gallup, have left their job because of their manager.
Yeah, and there's this saying that you join a company for the company and you leave because of the manager. And I think a lot of these stats bear this out. Like your experience as an individual contributor is so tied to your relationship with your manager. So there's a ton of pressure on managers to be great, or else your people leave, and obviously that can kind of hurt your feelings.
Yeah, it can hurt your feelings, and it can hurt your team, and it can hurt business outcomes, shareholder value. All those things are way more important
your
than feelings. But this proves out, right? There's a charter stat that said that 2/3 of first-time managers report being uncertain or anxious about the role. It is a very big change to go from an IC to a manager.
Yeah.
So I completely understand feeling nervous, anxious, what's going to happen? This is a completely new set of skills. How am I going to fare in the role?
Yeah, I think that stat to me is really interesting because it seems like almost everyone that starts to become a manager feels underprepared.
Yeah.
And I think there's something so true about here. There's like the Peter principle where
Yes, I have that written down too. That's
wow,
so funny.
we're synced up. Where you
Yeah.
rise to the level of your incompetence.
Can you define that a little bit though? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, basically you keep getting promoted until, because you're good at a job, you get promoted, and then you stop getting promoted when you're bad at the job.
Yeah.
But then the idea is like everyone that's like where they're at kind of like maxed out, and
Yeah.
like you're getting like a suboptimal version of them. Now, whether that's true or not, you're gonna have to ask Peter himself. But the idea I think is really true, which is going from IC to going to a manager, it's an entirely different skill set. What got you here won't get you there. You can be an amazing engineer. It doesn't mean you're going to be a great leader of engineers. And they are very different skill sets. And when I was at Marquette, my previous role, we actually were working on this curriculum with engineering students because Marquette has a really strong engineering program. They would graduate, they'd go work for a great Minnesota company like a Medtronic or a 3M.
Sure.
And they would be fantastic at engineering. So then they would get promoted and they'd have to manage the engineers. And the school kept getting a ton of feedback, basically saying, these engineers are amazing at their job, but like, did you guys ever think to teach them about management? Like, they're not effective managers, and that kind of put a ceiling on their career. And I think a lot of people overlook this. They just assume that if you're good at your role, you'll be good at managing other people in that role. While that might be part of it, it's definitely not the whole story, which makes first-time managers in particular a really hard job to excel at.
Well, one of the things that you just said that I'd love to like stop and dissect
Yeah.
a little bit is that being a good engineer but not a good manager puts a ceiling on their career. And I think what I would love to talk about today is like why that's the case.
Yeah.
And if that should be the case, because I really strongly believe that you shouldn't have to be a manager in order to accelerate your career.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of a question a lot of people are dealing with. Like, they might love doing the work and they want to grow in their career, they want to get more compensation, they want to get more responsibilities, but they might not want to manage people.
Yep.
And as we know, like kind of how corporate America is set up, you need to become a manager to, you know, quote unquote level up or grow in your career to the full extent it can. And that can piss some people off, or it can put people in uncomfortable situations where they're like, I guess I have to be a manager.
Yeah.
They go into it, they're not prepared, it backfires, and they have a terrible experience.
That's exactly it. Like everybody, you have had a bad manager. Like I guarantee it, unless you are the luckiest bitch on the planet, you have had a bad manager. And like there's different levels of bad.
And if you haven't, we're going to tell your manager to get worse.
Yeah.
So you can experience it.
I'll reach out to your boss personally and be like,
Be worse.
terrorize them.
Yeah.
No. But I do think you've had a subpar experience, maybe a subpar few months with a manager, but you know how much a bad manager or a bad boss can impact your career.
Yeah.
It sucks when the person that is telling you what to do, that is delegating tasks to you, isn't effective or isn't communicative or has some like lack that impacts your day to day. And I just don't think it should be required for you to become a manager in order to accelerate your career.
Yeah, I mean, exactly what you're saying. A bad manager affects the team. We saw that in the
Yep.
one of two people leave because of their manager. The issue I have with that, though, is yes, I think if you're an engineer and you're really good at engineering and you want to stay in engineering, there should be an engineer 1, an engineer 2, an engineer 3. So you're able to move up, so to speak, in your career. Again, make more money, get more responsibilities. But I do think that if you really want to grow in your career, you want to end up run a company, you're going to have to figure out how to manage people. And I don't think it's a surprise that it's viewed this way, because I do kind of think it's the truth. Like, you as a manager have the ability to impact more than just yourself. You can scale your impact. So if you're a great individual contributor and you want to keep being a great individual contributor, that's great. But like, I do think you are putting a ceiling on your career because you're only going to be an IC. If you're able to be a great IC and to motivate those around you and to lead a team, not only can you have a great impact, but you can help other people have a really powerful impact as well. So cumulatively, you're having a more impact on the business, you're going to be rewarded, you're going to keep growing. So I don't know, I don't necessarily agree with you. I think it makes sense that in order to move up fully, you have to become a manager at some point.
Yeah, I mean, fully, but also like if your goal is to have maximum impact on a company, then of course you should be a manager and you should try to be the best manager you can.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I think that if you're ambitious and you want to have a fruitful career, the idea that management is the only path you can take, I think leads a lot of people towards that path that don't want to be there.
Yeah.
And that therefore negatively impact the entire team.
Yeah, I mean, I hope if you don't want to be a manager, then you shouldn't feel pressured to do it.
But you do. Like, that's just like,
Why do you feel pressured?
if you're ambitious and you're like, I want to climb the ladder and I want to like increase my compensation, I want to be a VP, I want to be whatever, C-suite, you have to manage people.
Yeah.
And like, but if you don't like managing people, there should be a way for you to continue to grow your career that doesn't involve.
I mean, they could make engineer 10, 11, and 12, and
exactly.
you could keep going that way. But my point being is like, I hear you. I think that people should have every right to stay in their current role, to still be valued over time, and to get all the benefits of like, tenure and stuff like that. But I just think that outside of these like, definitions of manager, definition of individual contributor, you are going to get paid requisite to the impact you can have on a business.
Yep.
And as an individual contributor, you can only have so much impact because it's only you that you're responsible for. As a manager of a business unit, as a manager of a company, you can have an outsized impact on the entire business. So therefore, of course, you're going to get more rewarded. You're going to get more opportunities. You're going to get more pay because you actually have more at stake and you're probably held to a higher standard as well. So to me, it makes sense. Like, I do think in order to fully move up in your career, you have to become a manager. Now, does that mean we're training people like properly to become managers? No. The question I have for you is like, do you think that because people are scared to be a manager, have these anxieties around being a manager, they like assume they wouldn't be good at it, so they don't want to do it? Is it out of fear? Like, why don't people want to become managers?
I think that's a good question. I think that if I had to guess, I can't get into like anybody's mind.
Yeah, we're working on this technology.
Elon, message us. No, I mean, I think managing other people, having other people's careers in your hands is a really scary thing. And especially if you're maybe not as comfortable talking to people, you're not as like extroverted, like being a manager is very scary.
Yeah.
It's also a lot of work.
Yeah.
And your first time managing, you're probably not exclusively a manager. You're probably a player coach.
Right.
Which basically means like your first few years, just like you're just doing extra shit.
You're still doing your full job and you're managing other people, and it's a lot of work. Yes.
It is. And so I don't think it's necessarily that people are like, oh, I don't want to be a manager, but I still want to like accelerate my career or whatever. I think it's like people think that the only option is management. And so even if they're like, I don't want to do this, I don't think I would be good at it, and I don't enjoy the idea of like managing people.
Yeah.
They still do it.
Yeah, my argument is if that is you for sure and you feel so confident you don't want to be a manager, like you should have a conversation with your manager about what are the opportunities at this company if I don't move into management. And maybe they are super progressive and thoughtful and have developed this plan. They probably haven't. And so like realistically, I do think you're going to be kind of trapped a little bit in your career. My question for you is, we talked about we enjoyed being a manager. Did you want to be a manager at Morning Brew?
Okay, this is actually interesting. I hadn't thought about this until this exact moment, but it's a good point. When I left for Morning Brew, the next step that I thought was necessary was management. And so when they offered me a management position here, I was like, this is an obvious next step.
Yeah.
But I was freaking out. I was so scared. And we had kind of like a long tenure between when we got hired and like when we started.
Yeah.
It was like 4 months.
Yeah.
And I spent 4 months like freaking out. Like, I don't know how to manage, and it's going to be very scary.
Yeah.
It ended up being fine.
And well, you were my manager.
Yeah, that's
also
surprise.
Breaking news on the podcast.
Kyle was my first direct report.
Yeah.
And it was what, like 5 months?
And now we're co-hosts. Look at that.
Look at us.
Yeah. I mean, you had a tough assignment your first time up to bat. Yeah.
Well, because you were like, this is stupid. Like, why we were doing two completely different things, and it was like, why am I managing you? And that's one of the reasons why I was so scared, is because if I was managing someone like Charlotte, who is an editor and a writer, and I felt like I could edit her, there were things that like maybe I could help her with. With you, I was like, I don't know anything about community.
Yeah. I mean, what's great here is I think you're tapping into a lot of the anxieties people have when they think about management, which is, I've never done this before, so I'm really scared. It's a new skill.
Yeah.
What if they don't like me? What if I'm not as good as I think? What if I know less than them?
Yeah.
Like, do I have to become an expert in all these things? And I'm worried that people have those fears, and what it causes them to do is be like, I'm not cut out to be a manager. And I've just seen how amazing the growth has been in my own career from being a manager. I think you learn a ton about yourself. You learn a ton about team dynamics. You have to get pretty uncomfortable, and through that you grow and you learn. And I would never want someone to not experience that because they're afraid. But again, I think these anxieties are real. You've alluded to them perfectly. Like, they definitely exist. I just don't want that to stop people from playing the game or thinking, I should give this a shot.
I agree. And I think if you're saying, I want to grow in my career and I feel maybe a little scared, but ultimately excited to be a manager, then I think it is worth it. To answer the like main question of this conversation, it is worth it to become a manager, but I think you have to be really, really intentional about how you're approaching it.
Yeah.
Because it's not like I would say that it's kind of a career change.
Yeah.
You're going from doing the thing to guiding the people doing the things. And just like when you go from, marketer to graphic designer, like, you have to learn a lot of new stuff and you're going to make mistakes. The difference is that those mistakes have real impacts to other people's careers and their day-to-day.
Yeah.
And that makes stakes higher. And we'll be right back after this. Okay, back to the show.
Yeah, you definitely shouldn't take it lightly. And I think there should be more. I mean, my pro tip for employers is like, there should definitely be more new manager training, opportunities to kind of test drive management, not in a formal capacity. Because we're seeing like a lot of people are scared about this. It's affecting your team. So more training would be very helpful so people can be more confident. My maybe spicy take though is like, if you wouldn't be a good manager, I actually think you're probably less effective of an individual contributor than you think you are.
Like,
because I think a lot of the skills that great managers possess, I think individual contributors should possess as well. Like, if you're thinking the difference between individual contributor and manager is I only have to worry about myself, manager, now I have to worry about a team, you're probably not that good of an IC, because I think the best individual contributors still have a team lens. You're still trying to work with your team, elevate their game, like challenge them in constructive ways. And so I actually think you'll probably have a sense if you're a good manager before you're, forced to make that decision, because you should be exhibiting some of these skills already. Getting good at like influencing without authority. If you can do that, then once you have authority, you're going to be good at influencing. You won't need to rest on, well, I'm your manager. So I would just say, like, if you don't think you could be a good manager, there's skills you should be developing regardless if you ever become a manager, because they're important even as an IC.
Damn, that's a good take. That's annoying. I was ready to fight you on that one, and it's like, that's really smart.
Yeah.
Because I was just I wrote down this list of like what a good manager is.
Right.
Well, that's probably also a good IC, right? Like, communicative, coaches and develops, isn't competitive, like wants to see other people succeed.
Yep.
And those are all things that are also pretty good for an IC.
Right, exactly. It's just like you if you want to be an IC, but you're like, man, I wish my career could grow, like, you probably would have to develop the skills that you would need to be a manager to see yourself grow as an IC. And once you get good at those skills, why not take the leap and become a manager? And that would be my real encouragement to people. Like, I was actually really worried I would never get the chance to manage. I was doing AmeriCorps, which I kind of managing like 40 kids, but that's a whole different story. And then I was in grad school, and then I was like an individual contributor, and I really felt like I wanted to be a manager. And because of that impact, like I like to be able to be like, okay, not only can I have impact, but I can help other people achieve what they want to achieve, and the team can have more impact. But I was afraid, like, how am I going to get there? Who's going to ask me to be a manager? You kind of have to be in the right place at the right time. Your team has to be growing. Business has to be pretty good. Your manager has to have confidence in you. And so I'd hate for someone to be like, I'm not sure, get the opportunity to be a manager and turn it down because they're like, no, I want to stay as an IC, and never get that opportunity again. I just like go for it, get the training, see how it is. Maybe you fail, but that's life. Like, you could fail at any number of things. Like, get in the game.
Yeah.
And that's my advice.
Yes, but it's like playing fast and loose with somebody else's career. Like, I've had managers that so did not want to be a manager.
Yeah.
And it's so clear that they just want to be doing, like, they were doing IC stuff as well. Like, they were doing research. And I was like their little analyst or whatever.
That was your proper job title.
Yeah, little
analyst.
And it's just like, he was so smart and so good at his job, and just so did not care what I was doing, as long as I was like the output was exactly what he wanted.
Yeah.
And it really impacted my quality of life. Now, granted, I learned a lot. And so it's not like, oh, my life is ruined because he didn't want to like develop me into another little junior analyst of his.
A bigger analyst.
But like, if everybody feels like that, I think there should be a way to do it without needing to manage.
Yeah, but I think it's one of those things, and I'm going to contradict my earlier sentence where I was like, I wanted to be a manager. Yeah. But I think if you're on the fence, it's clear you have self-awareness. Yeah. It's clear you're thoughtful. You're probably on the fence because you recognize exactly what you're saying. Man, I have more impact, but I could really affect someone's career. You're going to be a pretty good manager if you're already self-aware enough to know what's involved in being a manager. So again, I would say go for it. Try it out, test it out, see how it is. Don't let the fear of playing keep you out of the game.
That's nice.
So what would your advice be for someone who is trying to maybe figure this out? They're kind of dealing with this question, should I be a manager? And like, what questions should they be asking themselves if they are going to take my advice and go for it? Like, how should they be thinking about that? What are some signs they might be a great manager? What should be things that they should be concerned about?
Yeah, that's a big question. I mean, at Morning Brew Learning, like at our last job, we spent literal years working on this, like new manager boot camp and all of that stuff. I think a good manager is one who is transparent and communicative and ultimately, has the team's best interest at heart. Where did I see this? Maybe it was you who said it's like a manager has the company first, the team second, and the team members last.
It was an article we did in research.
Oh.
Yeah. But I'll take credit for it.
Sure, great.
Yes.
Wow, you were so smart when you said that. But I think that like having the team in mind, but also like really wanting to develop the team members, I think is something that anyone can, if you have that like desire, you could probably become a good manager. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think your mindset has to change where you're not just focused on your work, but you're focused on the team. You have to understand how your team kind of correlates to company success. Like, I think that is another way in which your career grows, is the scope of what you have to understand and how everything connects expands as you move up the org chart. And I think that's also really good for your career. And another benefit of becoming a manager is, okay, now I'm not just seeing how my work impacts like my team's work. I'm seeing how the team's work impacts the company. And then as you scale, I'm seeing how every division impacts the company. And it gives you this scope and this perspective about what matters in business, what levers you can pull. I think those are really good skills to have. And you're just not going to get that insight or that perspective if you're stuck as an IC for your entire life.
Yeah, I agree. Sure. I don't know. I think you can also be thinking about that as an IC. And I think while it's probably very cool to move up the ladder and like start managing more people and manage managers and all of that, like you can still see the impact as an IC.
Yeah, I mean, I think one interesting nugget in like that I see out in the world, and I think employers should be thinking about is, right, you don't want to lose talent. So you might have a very talented IC that like is actually having a ton of impact. And I wouldn't arbitrarily say, well, we can't pay them more because they're an IC. Like it should be tied to how much you're helping the business. My take is managers tend to help more if they're effective. But if you have a great IC, I wouldn't put an arbitrary band. But you can only you should be rewarding people for the work and the impact they're having on the business. And you see this in sports, right? Like the coach might be the manager. The most players, at least like in basketball, for example, are making more money than the coach because they have more impact.
Right.
You would never go to your star player and be like, well, you actually don't have a direct report on this team, so we're not going to pay you that much. So don't for employers, don't make these arbitrary limits. I do think in general, though, if your focus is growing in your career, if your focus is increasing your compensation, the world is structured in a way where that's going to only be possible really through management. And I think it makes sense. I think Kayla's presented a lot of counter arguments to that, but it is more realistic, I think, what I'm saying.
Yeah, fine. But I do think if you're on the fence, you're maybe a few years into your career and you're thinking about what you want to do next, and you're not sure if you want to push for more IC opportunities, like I want to grow as an individual contributor, or I want to become a manager, One thing that you said, I'm going to take your phrasing, is to test drive management,
Yeah.
which I really, really love.
I think it's a great tactic.
I think, are there ways that you can maybe put another IC under your wing? Maybe join some mentorship opportunities at your company or elsewhere, kind of taste what it's like to develop somebody.
Or even on a certain project,
Yep.
talk to your managers, hey, can I lead this project?
Yep.
And it's, that it's time bound, it's not forever, and you can kind of get a sense of it. That's a great tactic. I said it, you stole it, just want the record to be clear.
I mansplained you.
What other tactics do you have for people thinking about, is it worth it to be a manager?
Yeah.
What tactics do you have for the listeners?
I'm going to say something a little counterintuitive based on what I've been saying the entire time, but don't beat yourself up too much. I think regardless, especially when you're at the precipice of becoming a manager, there's a lot of really complex feelings about that. I have to become a manager because that's what is expected. I want to continue to grow and therefore I have to be a manager, but I don't want to, or I'm scared. Like, those are very normal feelings.
Yep.
And I think acknowledging them and then and being really thoughtful about what you want your next step to be. And then if you do decide that being a manager is something that you want to do, giving yourself some grace. We talk about imposter syndrome a lot in new management. A lot of people will become a new manager and feel like, oh my gosh, like these were my peers and now I'm managing them. Like, they don't like me. They don't think I know what I'm doing.
Can I do this? Yeah.
The reality is you kind of are an imposter when you're a new manager. And I think giving yourself that grace of like, I actually don't know what I'm doing right now, but enough people have trusted that I do.
Yeah.
That I'm going to be able to figure it out. There's another Cat Cole we keep bringing her up. We love Cat Cole.
Yeah.
Cat Cole quote, which is like, I don't know what to do, but I know that I'm going to figure it out.
Yes. Right.
And I think giving yourself that grace for the first 18 months of new management is going to do a world of good for you.
I think that's really beautiful advice. And also, they picked you for a reason. Someone saw something in you that said, this person can handle this. Hopefully you're at a company that's going to give you support in that new management. And if you're feeling this, I would even ask your manager, I'm really excited to be a manager, but I want to do really well.
Yeah.
Can I go take a new manager boot camp? Can I go take a course that's really going to get me primed to succeed right away? I think my tactics for people, first is be realistic. We can talk about how it's unfair that managers make more money or it feels like that's the only way to grow in your career. And I just think yes, and it is true.
Right.
And so if you really care about making a ton of money, I mean, maybe go be an entrepreneur and start some big company. But if you want to make a lot of money in corporate America, you're going to have to become a manager.
Sure.
I think if you want to have an easier time developing a wider scope and perspective, you're going to have to be a manager. And if that isn't interesting to you, that's fine. But I just wouldn't lie to myself saying I can get this somewhere else because it might be hard to actually find that situation. The second tactic is evaluate the signs of management before you become a manager. We talked about this. Do you feel like you're able to uplift other people on your team?
Yep.
Do you feel like you're able to give pushback in a way that's received well and is appropriate? Do you feel like you have this maybe wider scope and you're like, yeah, this is probably the smart thing to do, but we maybe want to do this because it'll lead to that and that's better. So start test driving again, these signs of management to build your confidence up before it. And then my third piece of advice is a personal anecdote. I grew so much in my career from being a manager. I look back in I think the 2 years I was, and I learned so much about myself.
Yep.
I had tons of difficult conversations that helped me grow. It felt really good to feel like I really cared about my team. We were able to deliver results. I got to see them grow in their career, and that was really special for me. When I'm 88 on my deathbed, or maybe 108, let's give me 20 more years here. That is one of the things I'm going to look back on and be like, I'm really glad I took that leap because it is scary, but I learned a ton and I grew so much that if you're on the fence, get some support, talk to people, but go for it. You're going to learn a ton. You're going to have more impact. And I think it's just such a rewarding experience, not just professionally, but personally.
No, I agree that it's super rewarding. And I'm just cracking up at the fact that your deathbed, you're going to be like, I'm so glad I was a manager back in 2022.
Look, I'm a sensitive guy, okay? I'll remember.
Yeah, for sure. But it is.
They're like, Grandpa, last words, I was a manager at Morning Brew. They're like, what?
Unhinged energy. But no, I really do like that. And I think that being a good manager is Not to toot my own horn.
Yeah.
I thought I was. But being a good manager is like such a fun thing. Like to feel like not only am I like developing somebody, but developing a real friendship with your team and like working together and
celebrating together,
advocating for them. Like there is nothing more fun than being like, oh my gosh, my team is doing a great job and I have just advocated for them and they just got a raise.
Yep.
Like that's amazing.
Right.
That's so cool. And so I do think that if you're right for it and you can do it well, it is really wonderful, both professionally and personally.
Right.
But I just don't think that everybody has to be a manager to grow.
100%. There's tons of ways to grow. You can definitely grow as an IC. I think we've talked about the ways you might be able to do that. Any final thoughts for the listeners before we wrap this up, Kaila?
No, I don't think so. I think your deathbed comment really did it.
Well, folks, I hope when you're on your deathbed, which is many, many decades from now, you're also thinking about management.
Yep. And if you have any big feelings, email us per my last email at morningbrew.com or follow us on any of our socials. We're on YouTube. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok. We're on Twitter. Follow us.
We're on MySpace.
Comment.
Yes.
Like
All right.
and react.
Let's roll the credits here. Our producer is Michaela Heck.
Our technical director is Uchenna Wogu.
Robert DePel is our COO.
And our chief content officer is Devin Emery.
This show is a production of Morning Brew.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.